Hello everyone, Joe here from Draft FPL, and welcome to a weekly series helping you find some good value free agents and waiver pickups in Draft FPL. If you didn't know, alongside the YouTube we also do a podcast where we go into a little bit more detail about the Snake Draft FPL League, and we recorded the second episode of this season last night, so go and check that out if you haven't already. Just search Snake Draft FPL wherever you get your pods. If you want more Draft FPL tips, then make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything. Right, let's get stuck straight into the best Gameweek 3 waiver picks. Okay then, the first pick this week, we start with keepers as always, is Dean Henderson of Forest. They've got Everton away, which I think could actually serve Henderson quite well. I think Forest are going to be a much better team at home this year. It seems like the home crowd's really going to spur them on, but I don't think that makes Henderson specifically a bad pick when they're away from home. He's probably going to face more shots, and we know he's such a good shot stopper. That could give him more potential for save points, and I do think that he has a massive potential for save points and therefore bonus points as well. A lot of the defenders probably aren't going to get the pass completion BPS tick, which means that the keeper generally is much more likely to get bonus when they keep a clean sheet. Everton are not exactly clinical finishers either. They don't have a good centre forward that's going to be putting the ball in the back of the net, so I fancy them to kind of dominate possession, have quite a lot of shots, but maybe not get too many goals, which makes Henderson a really attractive goalkeeper pick this week. On to defenders, my first one is James Justin of Leicester. Should be absolutely nailed on. I think he's one of their better defenders and better players, to be honest. I think he's actually really quite a good footballer. Saints at home is a fantastic fixture. Saints don't have that much attacking threat. I really think that this is probably the standout fixture amongst the players that you could find on the free agency, so I think James Justin looks like a really good pickup. Like I said, I don't think he gets much better than Saints at home. They look really blunt in attack. I don't think they're even going to create that many chances, to be honest, and Justin does have a bit of attacking potential in that fullback role, so I just think he's just a pretty good, well-rounded defensive pickup this week. Next up, I have Mitchell for Palace. Pretty much absolutely nailed on at left back for Palace. I think Palace are a really good defensive unit. I think they're going to keep quite a lot of clean sheets this year. As long as they can keep the set piece goals to a minimum, I think they're going to do pretty well. I think Villa at home is a sneaky good fixture. Villa have not really been creating much at all so far. They look just really out of sorts, and I really fancy Palace to do a number on them here, to be honest. Palace's fixtures are really bad, apart from this one and a couple of others sprinkled in amongst the first sort of 8 to 10 weeks, really, to be honest. It looks pretty grim, so I really think they'll definitely try and pull out all the stops on the winnable fixtures in this run. So yeah, I think Mitchell is a great pick. I like the centre-backs as well, Guehi and Anderson, but they're a little bit more highly owned. I think they're probably marginally better picks because they probably have more goal threat than from set pieces than Mitchell does attacking threat in open play. So I'd probably go for one of the centre-backs, Anderson or Guehi, but if they're taken, then Mitchell is an absolutely fine pick as well. Final defensive pick this week then is Anthony Robinson of Fulham. I think Fulham actually look like a really good side. I kind of back them to be my favourite promoted team before the season starts, and I think that's kind of the way it's looking like it's going to unfold. I think they are a really well organised team. They all know exactly what their jobs are, and Anthony Robinson, he hasn't had much of a chance to get forward so far, but I think Brentford at home could see him play a little bit more advanced, get a little bit more involved in the attacks, and I just think Fulham have a decent chance for a clean sheet when they're at home against mid-table teams or worse, to be honest. I don't think they're going to allow too many chances. They're not going to get beat heavily by many teams this season. So I do think one of the Fulham defenders, especially Anthony Robinson, who does have that bit of attacking threat, looks like could be a good pick this week. On to midfielders, and the first one I'm going for is Granit Xhaka. A lot of people will be picking him up anyway, just based off his big return last week, but I think even once you dig a little bit deeper into it, you see that I don't think it was particularly a fluke. There'll be one camp that'll say he scored a lot of points to pick him up. There might be another camp that say, well, it's a bit of a fluke, it's a one-off, he's a defensive midfielder, don't get him. But to be honest, I think actually he is playing in quite an advanced role. He's kind of set to play the Gundogan role that he plays for City. And I do think that against teams that sit very deep, Xhaka is going to get into the box. He is going to get involved in the attacks quite often. And Bournemouth look like the kind of team that are going to sit very deep. When they played against City, obviously Gundogan got some attacking returns. So did Kevin De Bruyne from that central midfield position. And I think Xhaka could have similar joy this week. So I do think he is actually quite a good pick. Maybe long term we could see Zinchenko move into midfield and Tierney take the left back role, but I don't see that happening for the time being, to be honest, because the team is functioning so well as it is. So I really do think that Xhaka is actually a good pick this week specifically, and the fixtures are good for a little while, so he's definitely not a bad pick for the next few weeks. Second midfielder on my list then is Benrahma of West Ham. They have got Brighton at home this week, which isn't the easiest fixture. I do think Brighton are a really good team, especially defensively, but West Ham are at home and I do expect them to at least score in this game. But I will say Benrahma looked really good versus Forest. He really got involved with the attacks. He was right in the box. He was unlucky to get a goal disallowed, in my opinion, and I do think he will keep his place in the side because of this. And I think he's not that highly owned in many draft leagues, because people aren't sure if he's going to start, but I do think he'll start next week. And if he can recapture some of the form he had at the start of last season, then he definitely could be a really strong asset. Just have to, be careful. If he plays this week, you pick him up and he doesn't quite perform, you have to be ready to drop him again, because he could quite easily lose his place with all the options they've got. But I do think he'll start next week. He played really well. And if he starts getting some returns on the board, then I think he could be a valuable asset. Finally, we have got Elise of Palace. And this is the kind of pick I think that if you can time it right, you can get away with snagging someone off the freeze that a lot of people drafted in the mid rounds. And that is basically, obviously he started the season injured, people drafted him, then they realise they've got other issues in their team and need a midfielder. They drop Elise because he's injured. He's now back from injury, could well start this week against Villa in pretty good fixture. You can then pick him up off the freeze and you've got a midfielder that's now fit and playing for free that a lot of people picked in the mid rounds in the draft. So I think he's a pretty decent kind of mid to long term hold. As long as he starts and he stays fit, I think he has quite high upside, good potential this season. So I'm really big on the Elise pick now he's back fit and hopefully back in the team. Moving on to forwards then, my first forward pick is Edouard. I think in kind of a similar scenario to Elise, because Edouard didn't start versus Liverpool, people may well have dropped him thinking he's not going to start anymore, but I think he probably will come back into the lineup for Villa. I think that, having Zaha up front on his own works great against teams like Liverpool that are going to push really high up the pitch, and it worked perfectly, but I don't see Vieira doing that every game. I think it was just a one-off tactic against Liverpool. I think Edouard's going to come back into the team. They like him for his link-up play, and a lot of people may well have picked him up thinking he's going to start, dropped him because he didn't start versus Liverpool, and he could now be free, which I think could be quite a valuable pickup for the long term. Final forward pick this week is Mbeumo. Obviously he may not be available in a lot of leagues, but I think if he has been overlooked in your league, you should definitely consider picking him up. Brentford look like they're a really organised, functioning team, well drilled. Everyone knows their jobs. They know exactly how they're going to set up for each game. I think there's a lot of pressure taken off Mbeumo compared to last season where people had really high expectations of him. I think this year he looks a little bit more freed up, and I think he's going to do really well. I really like him actually wide as opposed to through the middle like he was playing for a lot of last season. And Brentford have absolutely amazing fixtures over the next few weeks. They've got Fulham away this week, then Everton at home, Palace, Leeds, Saints, and then Arsenal, Bournemouth, Newcastle, Brighton. So even over the next sort of 8 fixtures, you're looking at 6 really good ones and 2 that are fine. So I think if he's free, he's definitely worth a pickup in your league. Obviously he's not going to be free in a lot of leagues due to the constraints and the number of forwards, but if he is, you definitely have to look at snapping him up. Okay everyone, that wraps up my Game Week 3 waiver picks. If you found this useful, please like the video as it really helps the channel. Make sure you subscribe if you are new so you don't miss anything else coming from us, and we will see you next time.